Hi, folks. Welcome. I'm Dan McDermott. This is Google Plus Week, an unofficial look at the world's coolest social network. I am in Bentonville, Virginia. Let me do a round robin with our panel. We have Alan Furstenberg, who is in New York. We have Bruce Turner, who is in Lynchburg, Virginia. We have Craig Shipp from Frederick.com, who is, ironically, in Frederick, Maryland. We have Jeff Zayas in the Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Monica, I have no idea where you are. What city or town or country are you in?
I'm around Denver, Colorado. My lower third is a little bit broken. Let me see if I can get it up here.
Okay, and then Michael Banks is here from Augusta, Georgia.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get Alan first. Our first topic, we got some legal stuff going on, and the Google has settled. The best headline I saw was Google settles with FTC for record fine equivalent to 0% of their revenue. I think they earn 8 minutes or something, Alan. So this is a $22.5 million fine for double-click dropping a cookie on Safari browsers, even if the setting said not to do it. And they had previously, I guess, in I forget what year, the year before or something, agreed not to do such things. And they were, the Federal Trade Commission, I think it's 4 or 5 people, they voted to allow Google to not admit liability, but just to pay the fine. And one commissioner said no, they should have to admit liability. So is this a big deal? We've talked about this before, but they actually settled it.
We've talked about this. We've talked about this before. And let's keep in mind exactly what this is. This is Google getting in trouble for doing exactly what Apple told them to do. Okay? So now that we have that out of the way, I think it's good that Google did not admit liability. And if they had to pay a fine, well, okay, they had to pay a fine. I mean, I think it's clear that this is the what was it, the FTC or the FCC? I already forgot.
Federal Trade Commission.
Okay, it was the FTC putting them on notice, saying, look, you can't even step out of line because if you do, we're going to smack you around. And Google said, fine, smack me around. Okay, that's all this is.
You want to know what the ironic thing is? All it was like a recommend button on an ad.
It was, but then it opened up. It was one thing as they were getting ready for their +1 system, and then apparently it opened up any cookies from DoubleClick or something. I forget.
I already want to go to one of our comments. Joshua says what they were doing was considered common practice, wasn't it? Yes, that's exactly the point. They were doing exactly what Apple told them to do. They were using a system that Apple is telling everybody to do. There is nothing surprising about this. There's nothing secret about this. There's nothing illegal about this. There's nothing hackerish about this. They are doing a common practice.
It doesn't matter, it still opens you up to legal liability if somebody tells you to do this. But still, the fine is like a slap on the wrist.
It's a large slap on the wrist. It's a large slap on the wrist, though, because it's the largest fine that the FTC has ever imposed.
True.
Yeah, it's pocket change.
It happens to be pocket change.
It happens to be pocket change for Google.
But it is the largest fine the FTC has ever imposed, and it's a fine based on, and I'll admit, I'm bringing in some of my bias here, but it's a fine that is based on the premise that you're actually doing something wrong, and what they were doing is following instructions of Apple.
But not to skip ahead here, considering the Apple and Amazon security flaws that we then later saw this week, could Apple, have some major things wrong here?
Well, I think that fine specifically was another backlash at Buzz because they let them slide by Buzz, but they you're on notice, you're on parole, and then they messed up again, so now they slapped with this huge fine.
Sure, but here, when we say they messed up, and we're basically saying that in order to get one browser to work the same way that every other browser worked, they followed instructions from the manufacturer of that browser, and then they got in trouble for following those instructions. I think people are trying to wrap their heads around what this is and what this means, and is this Google doing evil? No, this isn't Google doing evil. This is Google trying to get the Safari browser to work the same way every other browser works.
So, but what are you saying? Are you saying that because it was Apple's instructions that Apple should then assume the responsibility for the fee
I think, well,
imposed by the FTC?
for starters, I think the fine, and again, this is my personal opinion. Obviously, the FTC disagrees with me. The fine was an unjust fine. I think the ruling was an unjust ruling based on non-technical reasons.
You
But then who should assume legal liability, in your
legal
opinion?
liability for what? There were no laws broken.
So you're saying that you completely disagree with the ruling?
Yes.
The ruling was not for violating a law. The ruling was for violating a consent decree that they agreed to previously. That's what this was for, technically.
Correct.
And
The
Megan Gray.
consent
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Alan.
No, you go ahead, Dan.
The Megan Gray, who is the attorney from the FTC, a recent hire, was the lead on this, and she was kind of bragging on Facebook and said, Google is paying with black eyes as well as greenbacks. We will continue watching them, and they will be increasing. We will be increasing deterrence as needed.
Exactly. They did that because of the Buzz incident. It was like, we're going to watch you for 20 years. You mess up, you're going to get punished. And, you know, they didn't really mess up, but it's not positive.
Okay, so another case that is in the news, the judge in the Google Oracle case, which was settled or in Google's favor, that said that they did not violate Oracle patents with Android. The judge has ordered Google and Oracle to reveal if they have paid any bloggers or news writers or commentators any money other than normal subscription fees to publications for coverage during the trial or preceding the trial or after the trial, and that is due on the 17th, so a week from this show recording. And I think that people have a right to know, right? I think this is apparently unprecedented. Ars Technica has a good article on it. Alan, what do you think? I think you have a right to know if someone's being paid to write an article in someone's favor in the middle of a trial, don't you think?
How is it relevant to the trial, though?
It's always like that, though.
That's the part that I don't get, is how is it relevant to the trial? How is it relevant to the ruling? How is it relevant to anything?
I guess it's similar to the Samsung case when the judge was angry that they had put out evidence that had been banned. They put out a press release with a photograph about a phone or some phones that had been ruled inadmissible, not on the basis of merit, but because it was submitted later. I think, is this about efforts to sway the jury pool outside of the courtroom, or what do you think it is?
It couldn't I mean, in both of the cases, it couldn't sway the jury pool because the jury's impounded, and the jury's been given instructions not to read the press. Now, Dan, you're a newspaper man, correct?
Yes.
Now, it seems to me there's some federal something about, being
Some
able
shield law?
publish things that, are legal to publish. What is that? Is that like the First Amendment, something like that?
Well,
correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yes, but also there was this thing with bloggers being paid for posts that was in the news several years ago, and I think it's legal.
Dan,
you have a right to be. And what's the difference between if you have a newspaper or a blog? What's the difference if the Koch brothers or the DNC buys a whole bunch of advertising on your page or in your publication? Are you going to be less likely to trash them? That's an ethical question. If Politico
legally
has full-page ads, Politico, I think, actually makes more money from the print newspaper, which is a very small circulation paper in D.C. It prints every day that Congress is in session. They have all these full-page ads from these big industries, from lobbyists. Are they less likely to trash them because of that? I don't know. What do you think?
It seems to me we had a case in court on this recently. It was might have even been the Supreme Court, and what was that case? Citizens United or something like that. And what did that look? My personal feeling is yes. I think all of this stuff should be disclosed. I think it should all be as above board as possible. I don't really like bloggers who are being paid to express their shill's opinion.
Oh.
Alan?
I don't get the relevance.
But any expert that testifies is being paid, and they always seem to be paid by the people that they want to put them in a favorable light. That's our justice system. That's how it works. You pay someone to lobby for your position, and that's
I'm not
what
sure
they
that's
do.
calling it works, but okay. What was that,
Yeah,
Monica?
that's it. It works.
I want to clarify, because there are actually a lot of people who really don't understand Citizens United. And though I understand you are being sarcastic to make a point, I wonder if you might actually clarify, because there are many people who really don't understand the Citizens United ruling.
And I am probably one of them who does not completely understand the Citizens United ruling. My gist, the gist of it, though, where I was going with this, is that the Supreme Court has stated, and I'm willing to be corrected on this, that it is legal for corporations to, basically, the corporations have First Amendment rights.
They're people.
No, I'm not saying that, and I'm deliberately not saying that.
That's what the press said to try to explain it. But yeah, that's what it's about. It's that they have you have a First Amendment right, because a corporation is composed of its shareholders and its board. It's human beings that come together, and mainly to be able to raise money and offer equity in exchange for money, they form a corporation. And that's as old as America. It predates America. And so they said that they have a First Amendment right too. It was being unfairly restricted. The Democrats were against this because in the last election, remember, then Senator Obama dramatically outraised John McCain for the election because they've got all these things in place. But now the reverse is true. The money's been unleashed, and the former Governor Romney is dramatically outraising President Obama, the incumbent. And Joshua Hughes, watching on YouTube, says it should be fine as long as you see some indication that the blog is an ad. George Cozy, the job of the judge isn't to be angry, it is to uphold the law if any law has been broken. No, it's not legal. I mean, I don't think it's illegal. I think, again, there's a fine line, a direct payment. And is it, like I've had stories where they wanted it, like they'll offer you money. They won't pay you for the interview, but they'll buy your pictures that go along with it, that kind of thing. That happens a lot in television. They'll have someone on one of the morning shows, and they'll buy the rights.
Yeah,
It happens in the stock market. It happens in
they send doctors on very expensive trips and to conferences where they give them all these perks, and then basically they say, and here's all these free samples of this drug. Like, we're not going to pay you to prescribe this drug, but we might send you to the Bahamas next year if you are willing to think about our drug.
I mean, there are all ways around it, as you said. So, and it's not going away as long as people are tempted by financial gain or some sort of motive other than doing the right thing. But I don't know. I mean, I guess the judge just wants to make it public. I'm not sure what purpose it serves other than it would embarrass the companies involved, and it would be potentially career-ending if it's a mainstream reporter. And one in our descriptions, I don't know the background, so I don't want to bring it up, but there was one article that a court observer from Reuters linked to and said, is this the article that caused the judge to issue this order that they be forthcoming with any payments they had made that were either from Google or Oracle during or preceding the trial? And again, we'll find out in a week, because on the 17th it will be released. The forms will be submitted, and we will discuss it, I'm sure. Okay, so a couple of new things on Google+. I want to switch reverse the order here. The notification you could notify 100. Then when doing a post, I think you're still limited to 24, 25 for a hangout, but you could send a notification via email to up to 100 people. But then it went down to 50 for some people. Some people retained 100. And now I'm hearing, is it back up to 100? Or I don't know what's going on, Alan. Set me straight.
I've heard people say that it's back up to 100 as well, but I've also heard people that say that it never went down for them in the first place. And Google's not saying anything so far. And just to clarify, this isn't just notifications by email. These are notifications that'll show up in your red box. These are the whole set of notifications that we see that we collectively refer to as the notification system.
I noticed one change from when I signed up initially. When I signed up initially, when most of you did early on, when it was in private beta, friend of a friend, the default setting was correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, the default setting was if someone plus mentions you, by default you would get a notification, regardless of whether that person was in your circles. Well, I set someone else up an account, as we've all done a few times, trying to get somebody to use the service, and their default was that only if they were, only if you had circled them would you get a notification if they plus mentioned you, which means if someone said, "Congratulations, Alan, on this great app you've written," that you would never know that person said that. That's the new default, I think.
That's interesting, and I can see it both ways. I mean, on one hand, having it as a notification turned on means that you can get, it's a good way to get private messages, which a lot of people have been looking for. On the other hand, it also means that people can spam you mercilessly. And notification spam is particularly insidious if you get more than 10, because that now forces you to go a whole different way to view it.
I wonder if that's linked to my... I'm sorry.
I can certainly see why they changed the default, if so. I'll be honest, I don't remember how it used to work.
I was just curious because I was trying to do that event a little while ago, and I wonder if that's related. That is why it won't let me post the
No, it's just the fact that, things are broken for you.
Very rare.
I'm a broken man.
Okay, and we have George Cozy on our previous topic. George Cozy, KOZI. All the cool people follow George Cozy. He's in the Netherlands. Google doesn't need to pay anybody to write about them. Those of us who use it write good things when Google does good, and we trash it when it messes up. But it, good press always helps, right? And okay, so what's this other thing? On
the black pillar boxes for photos. One of the last major redesign that we got, the one that everyone complained about, the white space. All of the photographers were complaining about the black space, and this was a space that was showing up either on each side or occasionally on the top and bottom of photographs that were posted that would go along with each post. In general, I don't think I've seen a single photographer that actually liked that. And they have finally, after months and months of apparently hard work, in fact, I think it's now been longer for them to make this one change than it took them to do the entire UI change leading up to it. They've gotten rid of those black boxes, and it is now the bluish gray that you see on all of the grayed out portions. This isn't a huge change, but every single photographer I know is thrilled that they've finally done this.
Okay. Any other comments on either the new on Google Plus stuff?
Yeah. Fine.
Okay, cool. All right. New from Google. Google's going to demote. I guess they're not going to remove the sites, but they're SOPA, the Stop Online Piracy Act, and PIPA, the Senate version, the Protect IP Act, were designed to not to destroy the internet, which would have been their impact, according to a lot of folks that I respect. But they were designed to police sites overseas that we can't control as well with laws here. And anyway, now they're going to demote. They've changed the algorithm that if it's a site that is hosting pirated content, they're going to demote those in Google search. So
that's an interesting spin on it. The way that Google has stated it will work is that sites that receive a lot of DMCA complaints, sites that received a lot of validated DMCA complaints will be lowered in the rankings. And what that basically means is if a site hosts copyrighted material and the copyright owner makes a legitimate claim and that claim is justified, then Google will take that into account. I particularly think this is interesting, especially in light of all of the problems that YouTube has had this week with the Mars Orbiter video or the Mars Lander videos. As far as I can tell, this new Google policy means that every single YouTube video will now be pushed off the first page of Google results. And call me crazy, but somehow I don't think that's actually what's going to happen here. And where I'm going with the Mars Lander reference is that NASA has releases all of its videos to the public domain. They're required to by law. So a bunch of news companies picked it up. They've been rebroadcasting it. They've been putting it on their YouTube feeds. And a couple of independent people, people like us, who were broadcasting it and putting it on their YouTube feeds, suddenly got takedown notices, basically notices that said, hey, you're in violation of copyright. And the violations were coming from news organizations like Reuters, television stations, just about every normal broadcaster, every traditional broadcaster that had put the NASA video up in their feed started issuing DMCA takedown notices to all of the independents.
Were they getting the videos from NASA proper, or were they posting the Reuters logoed version?
Everybody, well, Reuters is getting NASA's feed.
Correct. I mean, I don't think Reuters has a right to copyright a NASA video.
None of them have a right to copyright NASA's feed. It's in the public domain. But all of them were issuing claims against it. So these were DMCA takedown notices exactly of the sort that Google just said they're going to now start using to lower a site's ratings.
Not necessarily, because what I read on the Google blog was like, they're like these companies, like, because it says, you know, they think this will help Hulu and Spotify for you to find their services easier, and like they gave them data, I think 4.3 URLs in 30 days of like places that they say they copyrighted, and it was like Google, they're basically saying that these companies would know because they have the copyrighted material. So they would know if something's copyrighted from them. So once they, you know, say this is copyright, they go get it verified by a judge. Okay, their rate goes down.
Right. The difference, what Google is basically saying is it's not just a DMCA takedown notice. It is a validated DMCA takedown notice from a judge. And I'll be honest, I didn't even realize that anybody actually did that, because that's an extensive legal process. So I think this is Google, my take on this. And so far, you know, I haven't read the details. I don't know the details of how it's going to work, what Google's going to do. And of course, Google doesn't release their algorithm. But to me, what this sounds like is Google trying to placate the copyright owners in such a way that it doesn't actually mean that anything is going to happen.
I think it helps on YouTube, because the way YouTube used to be, it was certain people like EMI, people like that, they had this like superpower. So they say, oh, they're taking our stuff. Okay, Google takes that person's down automatically. It's just automatic. That person said, no, I've been reporting news. This is for years. So it goes back up. EMI does it again, blah, 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 goes back and forth for a while, and then they have to do the little judge portion. Now they just go straight to judge.
Okay, so
I can tell you that half of the videos I put up on YouTube get flagged for copyright, and of those half, probably at least half of them I appeal, and then within a week or two, or sometimes 3 weeks, whoever put the claim in releases it, and they go home. The others. How
do you appeal it, Craig? Because I had one video in which it was flagged, and it is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, you just click on the link.
Because it's just hanging out here on Google Plus, and it is not. There's nothing.
You click on the little blue notice that says that it's flagged or whatever, and that'll take you to a page that you then fill in the information. You put your appeal right there, and you check a little checkbox or whatever, you acknowledge or whatever. I think you have to type in your name, and then it goes into this process. And then of the times that I've appealed, I think every single time they've reversed, and I've got it. The ones that I don't appeal are the ones that I know that there is copyrighted material in there. So, for example,
do you have to have it monetized in order to appeal? Because I don't have it monetized, but I would like the account cleared.
Yeah,
like I feel like it's a slander.
Yeah, I don't monetize any of mine. But I'll tell you what's interesting about this is, even though probably 25% or maybe 20% of my videos remain flagged because I didn't appeal those, my account is still in good standing. There's a little thing where it tells you, you know, as far as your account status and all, and it's all still in good standing. So basically what they'll do is they'll flag a video like for example, I did an event the other day at a county fair, and there's this marching band playing music, and one of the pieces that they played is a copyrighted piece. It's not a real old piece; it's a copyrighted piece. They weren't even doing a very good job playing it. I'm surprised it matched the waveform. But anyway, that got flagged, and so I knew good and well that they were playing something that was copyrighted. So I didn't appeal that. Because when you appeal it, it kind of threatens you right there. It kind of says, if you appeal this and you lose, we're going to slam you. And so I only appeal the ones that I'm absolutely sure there's no copyrighted material in, and so far I'm 100% on them reversing it.
There's related to a question that we got from George Kosey. Is issuing a malevolent or fraudulent claim punishable? And I don't know. I mean, I believe in theory that it's supposed to be, but I don't think it actually is.
The first time,
let me just follow up on that real quick, Michael. I think our only option, and when I say our only option, those of us that embrace new media and openness and so on and so forth, is to cut the cord, is to stop watching mainstream media, stop supporting them. I mean, I did it 6 years ago, and I'm happy that I did. Just cut them off. Cut them off, cut off their lifelines, and let them just die the slow, agonizing death that they deserve. And then we won't have these problems. But as long as we have these old dinosaur media operations out there and about, then we're going to have these kinds of problems.
Well, okay.
Don't see the relevancy of the connection of one to the other.
As a dinosaur, you own your copyrighted content, though, Craig. I mean, if you chose to copyright your work,
no. He's being flagged for like music soundtracks and things like that.
But also, there's also.
All I'm saying is they've taken it to the extreme. They've taken it to the ridiculous, and my
But
videos
there's
aren't
also
getting that.
something called a fair use exemption. Do you understand the legal distinction there?
And that's the issue that Leo Laporte runs into all the time, because he'll get stuff flagged when it's clearly fair use. He's not. Fair use means basically you can take a little bit if it's for news or
a
commentary.
snippet is a fair use exemption.
And the reason he's getting flagged is because these big behemoths can do it. They've got the power to do it because they're big behemoths. Let them die. Let them die away, and then we just let's do stuff honestly, and let's do stuff above board, and let everybody police each other.
They're not going to die.
Take care of itself.
They're not going to die. They just moved them into search. They moved it from YouTube. The big guys in YouTube that had this power. Now they just moved them in search. So now they control the same thing. They have the same power, but now it's in YouTube and search.
Okay, let me switch gears and we're checking the comments. I'm looking on my Nexus 7 device. I've got my comment tracker, which is awesome. I can watch all the comments from all the different posts and the YouTube thing, all on my Nexus 7. So Joshua Hughes points out, so the system works or not. I think it's mainly an automated thing, and I don't think someone from NBC is looking at every YouTube video. I think there are ways that they can, it'll automatically detect it. And now they've incorporated that in Hangouts on Air. So if you start playing music, you can get in trouble or shut down, I guess, depending on.
It works, but it's dangerous. They got too much power.
Okay, so next up, Brad from Australia, and he does a great show called Tech Webcast, which happens in a few hours. I don't know if it's midnight or 1 when they do it. I'm not sure it's live, but I know if you go to Google Plus to do a search or just Google the search Tech Webcast is one word, Tech Webcast, you'll find it. It's a wonderful program, and so that's going to be taped in a few hours. But he mentioned a story to me. It's on TechCrunch. Nexus 7 supply issues stall growth, and they said it's a hot device, and it's the 7-inch tablet, which has been compared to the Kindle. And it said just a few weeks ago, Chatika reported that the Nexus tablet was on its way to surpass the Kindle Fire in its traffic rankings. By now, the company predicted the Google tablet was supposed to be ahead of the Fire. Instead, its latest data shows that it's still trailing Amazon's tablet by quite a bit, while traffic from the Nexus 7 to their network of member sites grew rapidly during the first few weeks after it went on sale. Growth stalled over the last 3 weeks. And they're saying that it's some supply issues. It's still hard to get. I lucked out. I walked into a random Staples. I was waiting to get a haircut, and there was one sitting there for sale. They had one left. And I said,
Well, and I think a bunch of people are returning them, too. So if they return them, they're not going to get much use.
I haven't heard that. Why are they returning them?
I've only heard two.
They're boxing them up. They don't like them, and they're returning them.
Are you serious?
I haven't heard of any returns. I've heard of exchanges for
problems.
due to problems,
Bill,
but I haven't heard any
Our
returns.
friend, the Navajo guy, he returned his, boxed it up and returned it.
Did he actually return it? He said he was going to, and then I told him what he was doing wrong.
That's what he told me.
Let me ask you guys, because I have one. The other part here, because Alan, I'll go to you first, and then Michael, because I don't think anyone else in the Hangout has one, but it said, while the Nexus 7 experienced a huge initial surge, users don't seem to be surfing as much as one might expect them to. And TechCrunch is suggesting as the novelty of the device wears off and as the honeymoon phase comes to an end, people simply don't use it as much as they used to. Now that the Nexus 7 is back on sale, it will be interesting to see if the growth rate picks up again. I use it constantly. I basically have abandoned my phone, except to use it to be a hotspot for my Nexus 7. That's the only reason I carry my phone. I can make a phone call with my Nexus 7 with an app. I can do everything I used to do on my phone. I mean, I take it everywhere. Alan, initially you told me you played with it a lot, and then you had slowed down with it a little bit. What's your usage pattern now with your Nexus 7?
It's picked up a little bit. I've been tending to find more specialized places where I use it. I don't do a lot of browsing with it, although I do some. I think my initial reaction reading this report was interesting. My first thought was trying to remember what the name of the console was a couple of years back. Maybe it was several years back now, that they released well before the Christmas season and was in very limited supply right up through the Christmas season. But because of that, it had huge, massive words of mouth that kept going, and it carried its sales past the end of the Christmas season well into the next year. And I'm wondering if, intentionally or not, if Google has ended up doing the same thing, that just people talking about how it's difficult to find is keeping the buzz on this going. And if so, that's a brilliant marketing tool, especially considering just how many advertisements I see for this stupid thing. I've never seen so many ads for a Google product before.
On Google Play, it still says 3 to 5 days for shipment.
Michael, you've got one. What's your usage pattern?
Mine is still strong, and I plan to use it more and more coming up when I go back to school, because I'm going to take this and a Bluetooth keyboard, and that's what I'm using for school. I'm not going to take a laptop. I don't need it.
Speaking of Bluetooth keyboard, do you think maybe Samsung's got an issue here in trying to have some competition? Because it was just announced on several blog spots, including Engadget. They're coming out with a Galaxy Tab 2.7, their 7-inch tablet, a student edition at Best Buy.
$249.
Priced the same as the Nexus, $249, but it's bundled with a keyboard and a USB adapter.
What version of Android?
Well, it's going to be it's Ice Cream Sandwich. I'm sure it will be updatable to to Jelly Bean, but it's $249, and it's designed for students. It's called the Student Edition, and it's going to be stocking the shelves at Best Buy August the 19th.
Kindle forced the price down for all these.
Oh, yeah.
Once the Kindle came out, and you had a Kindle Fire, and
I
you
did.
ended up, you returned it or decided to just switch back to a regular Kindle because you were
Yep.
using your Fire not for Android stuff, mainly to read books, right? Ebooks.
Right.
And so you preferred the lightweight regular Kindle.
Not only that, but I found myself, it's so much easier for me to check Twitter, check Facebook, check Google Plus on this phone that's in my pocket all the time. And so I had this conflict. Should I check Twitter and Facebook on my Kindle Fire? Should I check it on the phone? It was so much more convenient. I could operate this with one hand, and so that plus the dedicated reader of the regular Kindle caused me to switch back. At this particular point, I'm not really sure that I even want any kind of a tablet at all right now. I'm interested in possibly, maybe the, something like a Samsung Galaxy 3 with its size screen, or the new Samsung Note that's going to come out. To make a good reader, be a kind of a compromise between, they call it a phablet for that reason, I suppose. But I just thought it was interesting that Samsung is kind of coming into this market, for the same price point as the Nexus, and they're bundling in a keyboard and a USB adapter at the same time. So
there are a lot of companies. There are a lot of companies that are releasing tablets in this price range, in this form factor, and all of them spinning it different ways. I've got, I need to find one. I'm building off something that Mike Elgin wrote the other day about the 7-inch tablet being the perfect form factor for kids. This is a tablet that's very clearly designed for kids. And it's very interesting to see how they did so and see, I mean, it's essentially a clone in a lot of ways of the Nexus 7. It's got the same processor, same memory, whole bunch of the same things, and then they added stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see all of that.
Alan, the three leaders will all on the tablets will always be Apple, Google, and Amazon in whichever order, but because they've got these stores that they're making revenue from each tablet because people are buying from the Play Store or from the Amazon App Store or from Apple's store, and nobody else can compete with them with getting a subsidy. Nobody else is getting a subsidy in that way.
Sure, there are. That's one of the brilliant things about Android is you don't need to go to the Google Store. You can go to any other.
Samsung isn't going to make the same revenue from. I mean, I've bought. All three of us have bought apps, right, for our Nexus 7. Well, you're cheap.
No. Why would I pay for it?
I don't pay you enough.
You don't. We need to talk about my raise, Dan.
Indeed. Okay, so
before we move on, I want the panel's take on my theory that the supply shortages are just going to boost sales because it'll keep the buzz going. Particularly, what does Mike think?
I don't, possibly. And I say possibly because it depends on competition. Competition is good. Like you said, there's a $249 tablet. I hear about, I would say, a fourth of the people bash 7-inch because they don't like the size. Some like it, some don't. I think in the Android realm, no device lasts too long.
Well, I agree. I think that this is a classic sales and marketing technique, that one way to increase demand is to shorten the supply. Because then people are like, oh, I gotta have it, I might not be able to have it, so I gotta panic and go try and get more.
Yeah,
I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree.
I
I think that I think if you're selling crap,
it's a psychological trick.
It is, but I can tell you, I am a huge evangelist, and I'm guessing Alan and Michael are. I'll see someone with an Android phone. I'll say, oh, you got an Android phone. I say, check this out, and they just drool, and I can't get it back from them. So I think that I think the more people who get a hold of this thing, the more people are going to say, what is that? Is that a Kindle Fire? Like, nope. It's. Yeah. And I'll never ever buy another subsidized phone company phone again.
They can buy it on Google Play and get it in 3 to 5 days.
This is the thing, though. People do not distinguish between devices. All they know is Android. I know a lot of people don't know names of devices. Half the untech savvy people don't.
Mike, you're not even thinking broad enough. People are calling this a 7-inch iPad because they can't distinguish between iPad and Android.
Yes.
I want to end this with something that Joshua said and tie this into where I was going with this. Josh says maybe keep supplies low until the day after Thanksgiving. I think that's really what they need to do. They need to keep they need to keep the buzz going on this product because we know that both Amazon and Apple are going to release something for Christmas, and Google needs to keep the level high up so that people are still thinking about this product come November.
Okay, let me say one thing. I totally disagree. I totally disagree. And the reason why I disagree, if I'm a supplier, I am going to bang out as many of these things as I can in a short period of time, as much as I can, as production will keep it going, because that's what they do. They do not say, I'm going to hold back and try to create a buzz. It's not going to be, because they just want to get the product out.
It worked for that gaming console, though. And I wish I can remember exactly which of the three that it was. It was the Wii?
But I don't think they were holding them back. I think they had manufacturing issues. I
don't necessarily think Google is intentionally creating this shortage, but I think they're not mad about it.
The thing is that Android they move so quickly. There is not one device that lasts and sold good for years, more than 2 years. not
Yeah,
one device.
It's a disposable device.
I think there's something else going on here. I think that what's happening is they can't get enough components to build enough of these things because Apple's bought up all the components. I don't think they can build anything in any significant volume. Let's face it, they haven't sold that many of these things compared to the iPads. And that is because they can't make enough of them, period. And I don't think they're going to be able to make enough of them.
Maybe
No,
when they
I disagree
maybe
again.
when they take apart the Nexus Q, all the Nexus Qs that they have, they'll be able to
Put it back together.
recycle some of those parts.
I'm telling you, man, Nexus 10. That's what I'm holding
Yeah,
out for,
that'll be
Nexus 10.
that'll be interesting. That will be a neat product to introduce the day after Apple introduces the
Exactly.
the iPad 7. Alan, real quick question before we go on. You have a Nexus Q. It's the ball that it plays. I don't even know. Do you use it all? I mean, you play with it one time or?
I actually do use it on very rare occasion. There isn't really all that much use for it, which is why I don't use it more.
Do you
But,
have
I mean,
the
it's-
Nexus Q viewing parties where your friends and neighbors can come in and play, stream?
No.
Okay. He has an early model, a dev model, so they're gonna soup it up. We'll see where it goes. It'll be neat. Okay, so next we have Google. This is cool. Google Translate can now translate images, so you could be on vacation and see an interesting sign, and you're curious what it's saying. You snap a picture of it. It doesn't work locally. You have to have internet access, and Google will translate it from the photograph. So I think that is that's kind of neat. I don't know if there's much to say about that except it's cool.
There have been a bunch of apps that have done that for a long time.
Well, let me ask you this. This brings up the next issue. Siri. I guess you're an Apple. Is there anyone, Alan? Do you have any Apple devices, or Michael?
I've had Apple devices.
Okay.
I don't have any Apple mobile devices.
Do you have a 4S, Michael, or have you played with Siri?
I've had an iPad and I have played with Siri.
Tell me what you think. There's this big, in the media, they're talking of comparisons about Siri versus Google Now, or Google's, Google Voice search on older versions of Android. What do you think? I've seen pros and cons for both.
Let's be clear. This is not about Google Now. Let's be clear about that. This has nothing to do with Google Now. This has to do with Google Voice Search.
Isn't Google Now the thing you slide your Nexus 7 up and you tell it, where can I get lunch?
No.
That's an interface.
No, that's Google Voice
Search is what you
Search.
speak to.
That's
What's the
Google
thing-
Voice Search.
What's
Google
what's this
Now
called?
is when you Google
When I
Now
go
is
up-
when you
That's Google Now.
that's Google, the cards along
Where's
the
the
bottom are Google
nearest
Now.
lunch place?
That's
No,
voice action right
That's
there.
Google Voice Search.
Well, what's Google Now?
Google Now
is
are
a
the
card
cards.
interface.
Huh? Alan, what is it?
Google Now are the cards that show up that learn your behavior and give you information to help you decide what to do next or what to do now. So that's the thing that tracks, for example, it knows when you're at home and when you're at work and when you usually leave home for work and when you usually leave work for home, and tells you if there's traffic in between so you need to leave earlier. That's Google Now.
It knows when Michael normally looks at naughty websites, and they just pop up at random.
Exactly.
How do you compare, Michael, with Google Voice Search? I still think I'm right.
There's like three. You can compare it to three things. Google Voice Actions or Voice Search, that's always had the capabilities of Siri. What makes Siri different? It has the assistant. You speak to it, it speaks back action, where Google Voice Actions really doesn't speak back to you. There's no human-like interaction with it.
Like you can say, Siri, you're just the best. And she'll say, I bet you say that to all your phones. I mean, that's sort of human interaction, And she'll come back with different. And I guess it's a male voice in certain countries. But Alan, once or Michael and then Alan, when they open the API for this, or is it open? I don't know. But
There is no API for Google Voice Search or for Google Now.
Yeah.
What I heard speculation about, Alan, is that they're gonna. What if they opened it up, or they're speculating that there will be, and then people could create personalities
It's already possible.
To
I
use
know
Google search, right?
I know a few apps that have a voice or assistant or Siri-like component to it. They're not that good.
The big deal about Siri isn't the voice, and it isn't the big deal. It's where it gets its data and how it collects its data and what it does with your responses. So it's things like when you tell Siri, remind me to call my lawyer. Siri will set a memo at some point in the future. Will either text you or set an alarm or something along those lines to remind you to call your lawyer. Google Voice Commands does something similar, but they're not as advanced as Siri is, because Siri is able to plug into more of Apple's components, where Google is not currently. When it comes to the search part, here's where Google has a distinct advantage, because they've been working for a lot longer on the whole understanding what you're asking for and collecting these pieces of information and connecting them together. We see that more and more in Google search itself, and so it translates more naturally to Google Voice Search. Siri and Apple, they need to get their data from a lot of different places. So sometimes they'll go to Wolfram Alpha to answer your question, and other times they'll go to Yahoo. And sometimes they'll go to Google to answer your question.
80% of the time, right? Or 60%?
That's apparently what I heard.
Most.
60% was what I heard.
Some comments from folks watching George Cozy. I've played with Siri. Now, why does that sound kind of dirty? Joshua Hughes, Google Now is the cards with the algorithm that is trying to become your butler. Having a conversation with your computer is fun for about 2 seconds. They are all still very stupid for another 5 years at least, I bet.
I bet it will be a lot shorter than 5 years. But I want to point out something that Joshua said. With the algorithm that's trying to become your butler, I think, and this, I believe on an earlier show, we kind of dissected the fact that both Google Now and Siri are claiming to be your personal assistant, but they're doing it from two different angles. Siri is trying to be your assistant who listens to everything you say and follows your instructions very well, while Google is trying to be your assistant who will walk into your office and say, hey, you need to be at this meeting and you need to leave for it now. Or, hey, you told me that your tooth hurt. I've already called a dentist for you, and they've and made an appointment for you at 4. So they're kind of approaching it from two different angles, and at some point they'll probably meet somewhere in the middle.
Okay. Next up, I guess this is coming to iPhone, or is on iPhone and coming to iPad, the Google Voice Search, or the enhanced version. So any impact? I mean, is this just, it's another app, right, Michael, or is this like some game-changing thing? I don't know.
It's about the same app. It's just to pull those iOS users to see what they're missing, to another attempt to do ads. They make ads from it. They use search with ads, and they're going to use that with that.
Okay. All right. So next up, Michael, Google launching the Knowledge Graph and Gmail in search. Now, I guess when you're on the Gmail thing, if it's, they're rolling it out, testing it. This is not like they're rolling out a feature for everybody and they're just not done yet. This is a test to put. So when you Google something, it'll search your Gmail history as well and put that right in Google search. So explain this and what's the impact here?
Yeah, they're basically giving you can have about 5 messages as of now. I got my invite earlier today, but you can have about 5 messages in your search area, and it's going to be at the top. Basically, it seems to be an attempt to combine that search bar to almost be like an omnibar, where it pulls through all your information. Now, you're the only one that sees it. A lot of people have this issue with their privacy, where I don't want my Gmail in my search area because I want to search, and someone might be looking over my shoulder and blah blah blah. But I think it's a benefit in the long run. Now, the Knowledge Graph is almost, I would debate, is sort of like Google Now, but you tell it exactly what you want, and it's going to pull extra information for you based on what you searched. So it's just a few neat little features that there. They search is like their baby. They keep messing with it, keep putting stuff in there, making it more social, more unified.
Okay, so it's cool, and it's more, yeah, it's tying things together, so you don't have to use one product or the other. I almost never, Michael, once you get Chrome and you have the universal bar.
Omnibox, yeah.
I almost never go to Google.com, and I used to go there constantly, and now, like, I don't even know that they've put a neat doodle up unless I see it on Twitter, and then I'll go. Do you find that? I mean, how often do you actually go to Google.com and do a search? You don't need to.
You don't need to. You can do the same search through the Omnibox, because there's, when you type for something like Amazon, there'll be an option to search Amazon instead of go to Amazon.com. So you really don't need to go to let's say, Google.com first and search for it. You can do all that through the Omnibox, which is its purpose.
And speaking of Chrome, they're now at about 30%. They are, I guess Safari is holding steady, used mainly on iOS devices. Netflix, Firefox, and Internet Explorer, which is Michael's favorite, they're both going down, and Chrome is going up. So I think people are switching from Firefox, which is just update happy like I've never seen. I mean, and the updates take so long. With Chrome, it just happens behind you don't even know that they've updated it. It just all of a sudden is updated. But I just, when I see people using Internet Explorer, I'm like, oh God, they've never used Chrome, and I'm glad it's taken off because it's just such a wonderful browser.
Definitely.
And then, okay, so I guess any thoughts, or let me look at the comment before we go to debate and analysis section. The James Worley mentioned, the homeless vet reunion with the son in the Hangout. I saw the first thing, but I didn't see the follow-up. So I'm not versed on it. I've got to check that out. But anybody follow that?
I didn't see the follow-up.
Alan, did you, or Bruce, or anybody? Well, I'm going to hit that next week because I want to talk about that. I think that was neat. That got a lot of stuff, a lot of traction on Google+. But that's just amazing. And then, so is Dan getting any revenue from Craig, Michael, and Jeff for the free ads on the banners that show up when they talk? No, it's informative and a small compensation, I guess, for them. And folks like it because if you're watching on YouTube Live, you don't know. That's Pam.
I get 1 cent from the state of Colorado every time you look at my picture.
Indeed.
No, I don't.
Alan doesn't want us to know anything about him, so he doesn't have a lower third.
Oh, man.
Joshua
Not
Hughes.
everything is tied to money, guys. It's just informative.
Joshua Hughes, just a thought. I'm able to log into my Google account, but I'm not allowed to log into Gmail according to the company policy. Yeah, that's right. We did talk about the reunion 2 weeks ago. I hadn't updated it. So anyway, this is George made a point that George Cozy said he's in the Google ecosystem. He uses Google products and Gmail and all that stuff. And so, and Jeff Jarvis said the same thing. He said it makes sense that I would use a Google device. My advice is don't buy your typical Sprint, AT&T, Verizon phone. If you're not gonna get an iPhone, if you're gonna get an Android, get the Galaxy Nexus or one of those that you'll get updated all the time with raw Android. Because I have my Motorola Photon, which is still on 2 point something, as are over 80% of Android devices. It's from 2010, and I don't know if maybe one day I'll get ice cream sandwich. Alan?
We should point out, by the way, that having a Nexus isn't necessarily a guarantee that you'll get rapid updates. The Galaxy Nexus phone for Verizon has I think they finally released it, released the Jelly Bean update. What are we at? Over a month now after everyone else has gotten it. So it's not a guaranteed thing. there are still issues. But having a Nexus, that means it was only a month delay as opposed to 6 to 12 months, which you get with some carriers.
In my case, I mean, I'm waiting for ice cream sandwich. But
it has a better track record. It definitely has a better track record in most phones because there's not one Nexus that did not get at least 2 upgrades.
You'd think now that they own Motorola that they would, put the fire under their belly. But they're motivated to sell you another device. They want you. They don't want you. I mean, they want you to go into Sprint and upgrade your phone.
And that's the whole Android ecosystem. It does not stand still. It keeps going.
And it takes so long because the way it works, first they come out with ice cream sandwich, and now they're already on the next one, which I have on my awesome Nexus 7, even though the mic input jack is a lie. It doesn't work on anyone's. But that's a whole thing. But the first they come up with it, then Motorola has to come up with the version that works, and then they have to tailor it for the carrier, and wrap it with all this bloatware that Sprint puts on. Like I get a new notification that they have a new NASCAR app. No offense to NASCAR fans, it's a huge sport, but I couldn't care less, and I don't want them spamming my phone.
Do you care less if it made the phone cheaper?
It's not cheaper. I mean, when you figure out what I'm spending, I don't know.
But maybe it would be. I mean, the fact that NASCAR is paying somebody, and that goes somewhere. I
guess. Good for Sprint.
Anyway, let's keep moving.
SNL Kagan says pay TV companies should fear Google Fiber. Google Fiber was, when I first heard about it, I figured it was just internet, gigabit up and down, and 1 gigabit per second, which is quite fast. I pay $100 a month, and I get about 30 down and about 10 up, which is great for anyone except the Google Fiber people. And it's taken off. And then the argument here is they're saying that they won't be able to afford. They got about 45 million in cash. They won't be able to afford it to the country. But I think Verizon spent less than that to do 17 million homes or something. But they're going to put TV channels out there. They're negotiating with Disney and some others. So I think it's another player. I think just like in towns where you have
haven't they clearly stated that this is not a loss leader, that they intend to make money on the project in Kansas City?
Yes, and part of it is they're doing it above ground. The cost to run conduit and bury it is very expensive, but in Kansas City they're able to just go on the phone poles. Obviously, all of us would love Google Fiber. Craig's ready to go to the airport.
They're going on the phone poles in an expensive region. My understanding, and again, I'm willing to be proved wrong, is they're putting the fiber in what's called the electrical zone as opposed to the telecom zone. And putting it up in the electrical zone is a more expensive way to wire it. So they're doing something up there.
Do we know why they're doing that?
I don't. My guess is they're doing that because that's where they got the good deal.
I really would love to see the numbers on all of this stuff. In other words, how much it's costing them to build out that infrastructure at charging X amount a month for the service. What are their operating costs? How long is it going to take them to recuperate, building out that infrastructure?
I have seen estimates saying that it costs them $450 per house that they pass. So that means for every person who will ever be able to get it, they're spending $450. For the people who actually do connect, they get $300 of that back.
Mm-hmm. So the question is how much uptake they're going to have percentage-wise, yes. And we won't know that until the whole experiment is finished. And then ongoing costs, maintaining it, upgrades, whatever they need to do, ongoing costs, and then balance that with their monthly fees that they're getting and so forth. And if it turns out that this thing is actually profitable, that it makes sense to do, then that could be huge.
Yeah, I don't get this. One thing where I find fault with this article is, along what you're saying, this article says that Google, even with $40 billion in cash, they couldn't afford to do the whole country. Well, it's not practical everywhere. The guy up on the mountain is screwed. But if you're in a townhouse, upscale townhouse complex, that's going to be a lot cheaper. And but they're assuming that it's not profitable. I mean, obviously, if it works in Kansas City, they can cherry pick the right markets to grow. and they'll have no problem. I mean, making the money back, even if they wanted to get investors.
Even if they break even, they're ahead of the game by doing it and getting people using all of their services.
Absolutely, and then they can, and there's more competition for. I mean, how big a deal is Disney? If you can get Google Fiber for a whole lot less than you can Comcast or Time Warner Cable, and one has Disney, one doesn't.
But here's the interesting thing. You'll notice that Disney isn't on their list right now.
But they're negotiating. Apparently.
Yeah, they're also negotiating for access to Disney to the Play Store. You'll notice Disney is nowhere in the Play Store either.
Interesting.
Google is a really lousy negotiator when it comes to content.
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts on Google Fiber, and then we'll get to this blogger thing?
I'm sorry. I would also point out.
Is it just that Google is bad at negotiating, or is it that Disney is just really tough to negotiate with? Because
I think it's two things. One,
I think that might be part of it, considering how
Google doesn't have enough leverage yet. They don't have enough leverage yet. If they build out this network, and if they have a huge amount of penetration, I mean, let's say they get half of the people to sign up for fiber in that footprint. That's a huge amount of leverage.
I'm sorry. Can I just interrupt on one thing? It's not a huge amount of leverage. Certainly not when you're looking at Disney, who's got more leverage over Google. That's one. Two, I think Google is a lousy negotiator. Google just kind of assumes that everyone's going to want to go to them, and when somebody doesn't, they're left scrambling trying to figure out why not and what to do instead. We have seen this before. This isn't exactly new.
But also,
sorry, can I just get my point number three in here first?
Sorry.
Point number 3 is everyone is forgetting who the largest shareholder of Disney is right now.
Steve Jobs, or his estate, right?
Steve Jobs' estate, yes.
See, I'm basically the foremost authority. I have all knowledge.
So the bottom line is, though, if Google builds a network that's powerful in Kansas City and has a big market share there, let's say 50%, and then they aggressively start moving into other markets, they will rapidly develop a huge amount of leverage because they can say who is on their network and who isn't.
There is no evidence, though, to say that they're doing this to stay long-term, or they're just doing this to make a point.
Well, they better do it. If they don't do it, they're screwed.
But there's no telling what they will do, because everyone's assuming they're just going to spread. They don't have a good track record for that, let's say. If they don't do it, and if nobody else does it with them, if nobody partners with them and does it, then they're screwed. Simple as that.
Okay,
because these old incumbents, Time Warner Cable and Comcast and all these others, they are not going to play ball. They have to be forced to play ball.
All right, let me go to some web.
Before about dinosaurs there, Mike, Craig?
Yeah, it's really hard for me not to smile because they are trading on this old. I mean, do we have to just look at the Olympics and look at the NBC's coverage of the Olympics?
That's what I'm saying.
If you need an example.
These behemoths need to be forced to play ball. They are not going to do it voluntarily. And the only way they're going to be forced to play ball is if somebody like Google builds their own network and has a huge penetration and a huge base, then they can dictate terms, just like Comcast and all these others dictate terms now.
But Craig, let's look at NBC as a very specific example.
Yep.
What motivation does NBC have to play ball with Google at all?
Very simple. If Google builds out the network, then they tell NBC, here's what you will do on our network. And if you won't do that, you're not on our network.
They're not on their network.
That's right. And then NBC is screwed if Google controls the network. But the only way NBC is screwed...
Here's the thing. NBC isn't screwed because NBC owns Comcast.
Because Comcast is relevant right now. We need to make Comcast irrelevant. And the only way to do that is to build another network and get everybody to get on that network.
How are you going to pay for the Olympics if they don't have a revenue stream, Craig?
People are only going to get on that network if that network gives them the content that they want.
The jury's still out on that, Alan. The jury's out on that. We'll see what happens in Kansas City.
Craig, how are you going to pay for the Olympics?
Disney.
How can you pay for the Olympics if there's no revenue stream? NBC paid $1.87 billion for the rights to broadcast the Olympics. Very few people are watching at 3 a.m. or whatever. So they
maybe
put
it's
it in
not
prime time.
Maybe it wouldn't be as commercialized. Maybe there wouldn't be as much big money involved. The Olympics occurred before all of this big money was involved. They used to occur on very small budgets, and it can happen again.
Monica? I have a
Monica?
question for you, though. Everyone that I've talked to who has actually watched the Olympics has watched the Olympics on BBC coverage, or else they've watched.
Monica, come on, that's just the people you know. That's not John Q. Public. John Q. Public is watching it on NBC.
Agreed.
They had a 40 share the first night.
Actually,
it was epic. I mean, it was the best ratings ever. They made a profit. They expected to lose money. I would guess.
Or they have watched clips on the internet.
But that's the people you know that are cord cutters and that are sophisticated and so forth, and that's 0.01% of the people.
Most people were watching NBC. All right, let me go to some web comments here on my wonderful Nexus 7 running.
I'm really wondering about these record-setting ratings,
whether or not they're true or not.
Yeah, it makes me wonder at a certain point.
Monica,
you have to question.
I can give you an alternate data point. The cluster of people that I know, many of whom are tech savvy, many of whom are cord cutters, at least one of whom actually subscribed to cable so that they could get the NBC stream on their phone. Most of them are watching either the live, are watching the actual live broadcast from NBC's stream, or they're watching NBC on TV. Very few of them are watching BBC's coverage. In fact, I can only think of one of them who is watching the BBC coverage of it, and that's me.
Also, another thing is you want to be able to talk to your friends about, what Bob Costa said or whatever. You're reading tweets. You're missing the version that everyone at work is going to talk about. I would guess BBC had 0.5% and NBC had 99.5, but that's obviously not scientific. Okay. That story we talked about, the Hangout, we talked about a couple weeks ago, the homeless vet who met his son in a Google Plus Hangout. Wonderful story. James has shared with the URL with all the information about that and the Hangout is at trueamericanstory.com. So please check that out, trueamericanstory.com. Google now is pretty weak, by the way. NetScribe says, I bought a Nexus 7 for my 3-year-old daughter. Awesome. It's fairly durable. I've dropped it a few times. Alan's dropped it once, and you just kind of snap it back together. You might want to get her a case. I got Jellybean OTA from TELUS Mobility Canada a few weeks ago. The question is, will Google put TV channels out there, or will we be able to fill in our own personal channel with the shows we want to watch and skip the rest of the crap the TV throws at us?
That's from George, right?
George Cozy, yeah.
Right. This is actually one of my biggest criticisms of Google Plus, and not of Google Plus, of Google Fiber. And I think we went back and forth on it when I raised it last time. And that's the fact that their TV offering is absolutely as unadvanced as every other TV offering in the country. There is nothing at all technologically advanced about it.
Best they could do.
Well, there's TV. I mean,
it
hasn't really changed except the introduction of color and then the introduction of HD.
And then the introduction of DVRs. And no, it hasn't, and it needs to.
DVRs, which they fought. And then the TV channel as we know it is dying, says George Cozy. I don't know. They still have that footprint. NetScribe, there's no way they will make money just lighting up Kansas. They will need a much broader coverage to drive the kind of revenue it takes to turn a profit.
If they want to make money.
Of course they want to make money.
No, they might be doing it for a point. Google's done all these stunts just to make a point.
That is actually a good question about why exactly they're doing it, and that's one that we could debate for a good hour at least.
They wanted to make money so that they can prove the experiment works, and they or whoever can roll it out nationally. If it's a money-sucking hole, then they wasted their time.
What was the Nexus one for? What was the Nexus one for? It was to transform the way we buy cell phones. It failed. It was an awesome device. They tried to sell it on their own so we wouldn't have to, go through subsidized, be locked the contract. That failed. They were doing that to break the trend. It did not work. They could be doing the same thing with cable.
I don't think they set out to fail. I think they set out for it to be a success, and they were hoping. In retrospect, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, we were having a learning, yes.
Dan, what's
Alan.
a loss leader?
I don't know. I mean, okay. You can get updates to your Nexus phone immediately. OTA is... What is OTA?
Over the air.
Over the air, as long as you've got the Yakju version. Make sure you have the Yakju version and not Yakju XW. Thank you.
That's a version of Android, by the way.
Awesome. I don't know what the hell that means. Are Google Fiber customers restricted to using Google Plus accounts or Google accounts? Absolutely not. It's a pipe and TV if they want it, and it's just faster internet.
Yeah,
And they want to see what kind of innovations can occur.
Well, you are required to have a Google Plus account. You are required to have a Google account, but you're not required to use it, of course.
Right.
Yeah, let's sign in with it.
Okay. And if you do have, I don't even know. I'm not. I can't understand what any of that says. Monopoly sucks for the consumers. A monopolist will only produce until the marginal cost equals marginal revenue instead of demand, which means higher price and lower output. There's some philosophy going on here. Google is a corporation and is legally bound to try and turn a profit. Overall,
they can turn a profit with ads by themselves. It drives all their profit. They can do this thing on the side and blow millions and still turn a profit. They can do this.
Are they legally required to turn a profit? I thought they were just legally required to follow their shareholders' interests.
They don't have to. I mean, everything doesn't have to turn a profit. I don't think they made a whole. They're not. I mean, they're not making a whole lot of profit on Google Plus.
No corporation is legally required to turn a profit, but they are ethically bound to turn a profit and financially motivated to turn a profit.
If they go too long without showing a profit, then they'll say it's a hobby and they'll disavow you. You will no longer have a corporation.
They are legally and can be sued. Civilly, they can be sued if they're not looking into the at the best interests of their shareholders, which is their obligation on the board. Okay, so next topic. We all agree. Next topic. I think Mike or Priz, Alan Blogger continues to botch Google Plus integration. Tell us about this ratings bonanza of a topic.
This is basically Google, this is basically Blogger, as usual, having absolutely no understanding at all of what Google Plus is or what they should be doing with it. A couple of weeks ago, they now rolled out the ability for you to, once you create a post, you can share that post to your page, which admittedly is a major and radical thing because nobody else can do it. Unfortunately, it actually doesn't do most of what you need to do when you're sharing it to a page. So once again, they've kind of misunderstood exactly what they have, what they're doing with it, and why. I think in the past we've talked about how Google Plus, as it evolves, is giving you additional ways to actually create posts and to create comments and to reply to posts and to work with Google Plus more than just by working on the stream. The best example that we have so far is the fact that you can reply to things through email now, and it'll show up on Google Plus. We're now seeing that you can launch Hangouts from Gmail. It's always seemed to me that Blogger is another great place where you'll be able to create Google Plus content and seamlessly have it flow in, but they're not doing that yet. And it's just incredibly frustrating to me that they seem to be putting in time and effort and resources to doing something that nobody else can do, as in sharing something to a Google Plus page, and yet not go that extra step and actually finish the integration in a way that logically they should be doing.
If they finish it,
and I strongly suspect nobody else in this nobody else really cares. Michael, what was that?
If they finish it, everybody else is going to want it, and then they'll have an excuse saying it's not ready.
I'm not sure I follow that.
If they build all the tools it takes to post from Blogger to post to Google Plus, everybody else is going to like, hey, where's ours at?
But you've got that. I mean, Hootsuite can do it. I can do things in Hootsuite that I can't do in Blogger.
Yeah.
Anyway, anybody else have any other thoughts on this? As usual, I figured I was, the lone voice of reason in this group. Mike, you want to talk to us a little bit about Google two-factor authentication?
Actually,
why it's awesome, and why Amazon and Apple are need to seriously take a lesson from Google.
Actually, I will defer to Monica for the first half because she had something.
They already actually closed that loophole I think Amazon quietly closed that loophole right after that article went up on Wired.
Monica, why don't you start from the beginning and explain what was going on, what happened between Amazon, Apple, and everyone else?
Okay, there was this Wired article that went up called How Apple and Amazon Security Flaws Led to My Epic Hacking. It was written by Matt Honan, who describes how a hacker basically targeted him because they wanted his Twitter account, is what the hacker said. And there was a security flaw that basically led to his whole digital life coming apart. And it's a really long read, but it's a really compelling one. And it's, if you don't have two-step turned on, you should definitely have it. I think that this has been linked on your post, right?
Yeah. And basically what two-step is, it's an extra layer of security that is attached to your Google account. So basically once you sign up for it, it's going to, and Google two-step is nothing new. It's been out for years. But basically what it does, it allows you to time sync, or there's other, methods of getting basically a number code, and it allows you to log into your Google account from untrusted sources. So most people are confused thinking, oh, I got to do this every 30 days. It puts a cookie on machines that are not trusted, but you can add sources such as phones, tablets, and even your home computer as an app-specific device.
Now, Michael, can you step back just one brief step? Because I'm sure a lot of people don't have any idea when we talk about two-step authentication, what are the two steps? What are the two things that you need to do in order to log in?
Okay, once you set it up.
Now, before, as I understand, before everyone's familiar with one-step authentication. You type in your username and password and you're in, right?
Yeah.
Right.
What are the two steps?
Two-step is like the bank. What it is, you type your username and your password, and then you press sign in. It's going to take you to your second step, your second layer of security, which basically you have an option of putting in a phone number and it texts the 6-digit code to you, or you can have an app called Google Authenticator, and it's basically a time-based 6-digit that rotates based on time. And you can put that'll be your second step. Only then you can log into your Google account.
So the significance of the second step is that this number that you type in, it's a one-time password. So basically it's something that's either being texted to you, or it's something that your local app will generate, and it'll never be usable again.
Yeah, and sometimes, like with PayPal, I've got the little plastic doodad that you touch the button and it gives you the code.
And let me point out here, though, you cannot use, if you have Google Voice, you can't use your Google Voice number in two-step. You have to use your regular phone number.
Correct.
Because otherwise you could lock yourself out.
The problem with any of these methods that we're talking about is it's inconvenient for the users. And
but it's more secure for the user.
Until you come up with something that's not inconvenient for the users aren't going to use it. It's
Convenience does not equal security.
That's right. As soon as you get security, you give up convenience, and vice versa. But my point is, there's ways to have your cake and eat it too. First of all, when whoever called in to Apple, to their line, and got this information, social engineering got this information, Apple's systems should have been smart enough to know that he's calling from somewhere that this customer never called from. So red flag should have gone up right away, and they should have been more careful and made that guy jump through more hoops, maybe even made it impossible for him. But again, it comes down to convenience, and the customer always wants their problem solved right now and wants the help and so forth. So if Apple does make people jump through more hoops, then they're not getting that convenience.
And that's exactly what happened. Actually, Apple ended up jumping through fewer hoops. The person had set up a bunch of the utterly stupid security questions. And don't get me started on the security questions, because they're the most useless thing on the planet. but the person had set up a bunch of security questions. And when he couldn't answer them correctly, when the hacker couldn't answer them correctly, Apple then said, well, okay, let's use this other method to prove who you are. And that other method was even less secure. So yes, it all comes down to convenience, but here was a case where Apple tried so very hard to make it as convenient as possible. And because of that, they utterly broke their own security systems.
Yeah. Well, and also verifying who people are, that's the whole thing. The whole problem is, how do you verify who people are? And if somebody comes up with a solution for this that really works, that doesn't terribly inconvenience people, then they're going to probably make $1 gazillion. And nobody's come up with it yet. I mean, I can't even get my website verified. I own the daggone URL. They should be able to do a whois lookup and see that it's my URL, and that should be sufficient enough to get my damn website verified.
I thought you just put a link to from the website to the Google Plus page to do that.
You know, it depends on how your website's set up and all that. But you know, all I'm saying is they need to come up with a way to verify identities of who people are, and then they can do all these transactions safe and secure if you absolutely know who the person is. And
they also have to do it in a way that the system can't be gamed, which I think, and that there's
That's
not
right.
a huge amount of labor on their part, but they're not good at that sort of thing all the time. Okay, one thing they are having some success with is their driverless car, which is really cool. And now it's driven 300,000 miles without a single accident that was the car's responsibility.
Yes,
they have more than one, don't they?
Yeah,
they have more than one.
Yes, so it's now safer than the average driver.
Oh my gosh,
especially safer than Alan. It says, according to, I guess, AAA, on average, the average U.S. driver has one accident roughly every 165,000 miles. And our average miles per year is 16,550, according to the Federal Highway Administration. The average length of time we go between traffic accidents is 10 years, according to Allstate, and 14 years in Fort Collins, Colorado, where they really are better at driving. So anyway, it's, I don't know, I think it's neat, the idea of, we saw the video of the guy with the going to Taco Bell, the visually impaired person. But Bruce, you're going to get a driverless car to drive around Lynchburg, Virginia?
Yes, if it can take me to Whole Foods in Charlottesville once a week, that would be a good deal.
The one in Fairfax is better. All right, so that's cool.
We all agree. We all want that and fiber. That we have driverless car and fiber, and we're happy.
How about both in the car? All right.
Absolutely.
The whole thing. Let me go to Michael and then Alan on this. Let me go to Craig first about the new Mountain Lion will not have the built-in YouTube app.
iOS 6.
iOS 6. So tell me. So at first they'll say, "Oh, it's friction between Apple and Google." And then other people said it doesn't matter because they're going to.
Yeah, I don't think it's friction.
Else.
I think Google is trying to move all of these things to the browser. I think that's where they're headed, and so.
Huh?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I think so.
What happened was Google had a 6-year exclusivity with the iPad where they used their YouTube app. That exclusivity ran out, so Apple took that out. Now, Google's going to make their own YouTube app to replace it. Simple as that.
Assuming, of course, that Apple lets them, release it in the...
Yeah, as soon as it gets approved through the Apple Store, yeah.
I'm sure they will, but don't you think it'll be an HTML5 based solution?
No.
Not yet. It's not there yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
Video.
Okay. All right. And then I guess the Steve Wozniak story. He is worried about the move to the cloud. And the biggest.
I'm as worried about the move to the cloud as I am worried about the move to the PC. There
Well-
are risks with both of them. There are serious problems with both of them. And just because he's used to one doesn't mean that the other one, doesn't have both ups and downs.
Obviously, if the internet goes down, that's a problem.
Yep.
Hacking,
And if your computer crashes, that's also a problem.
well, for the cloud, if your internet stops working for whatever reason, you lose productivity.
And without the cloud, if your PC goes down, you lose productivity.
Correct.
Benefits outweigh the risks.
The other thing with the cloud is all these hacking things.
And the other thing with the PC are all these virus things.
Benefits outweigh the risks. I'll say it anytime. All the stuff is in the cloud I love. Make sure you have a backup. That's all I gotta say.
I remember the old days, Michael, you're too young.
Make sure you have at least 2 backups and put one of them in a different location than the other.
Back up
But who
your
does that?
back up your
I
XML
do.
file.
Well, you watch the
I make one
BBC.
backup.
You're more organized than we are.
It's
Craig,
never hurts to be organized.
I mean, you remember the old tape days, Craig. You'd have your tape back up and but I mean, who's going to, I mean, my God, we don't do that.
Yeah, but Dan, here's the question. How many times did you ever test that tape backup?
Never. I never did it. We did it we did it when I was the communications director for Randolph-Macon Academy. We did all these tapes and we're paying some guy to do this or they'd start it and do other stuff, but it was just this hassle. And if you are a bank, obviously you need to do backups of your data or have a company that does it, but I'd rather just rely on Google. And internet now, I mean, it's not like the old dial-up days. It's very stable. It rarely goes down unless you're, Hurricane Katrina or something. It might go down for a few minutes or something, but generally it stays up all the time. So, all right, let's talk about this.
Dan, one caveat to that. The problem is when you're mobile. That's the problem. Is when you're mobile, the infrastructure is not there. It's not stable. And so, if you're at home and you've got a cable modem or DSL or whatever, then you're probably good. But if you're out and about, I try to, all my critical stuff, videos, photos I want to show people, whatever, I certainly do not rely on the cloud. I have it on the device.
Certainly if you're going into a business to show them something, you want to have a really stable, fast, to put your best foot forward. But in general, my stuff works. But I'm not watching, when I'm mobile. But then I have a Nexus 7. Okay, so let's see. You're confined to Apple products. All right, and then finally,
I want to see you play a 1080p video on that Nexus 7 over a mobile connection.
Well, you can't.
There you go.
It doesn't have that resolution, but it doesn't
Or
need it at
720p.
that size. Yeah, I can do that. I can watch a YouTube video. And I can do
It'll
it.
spool up and stop and start and everything else, right? on your
Not
cellular
that bad. Not that bad. I've pulled up my show to show somebody in a restaurant, and I'm using my cell phone as the hotspot to do it.
And watch this, Craig. If you're using YouTube, there is a thing called preloading. Well, while you're on Wi-Fi, it will preload your entire subscription base.
We're not talking about Wi-Fi now. We're talking about a cellular connection. We're not talking about Wi-Fi. And there's no way I'm going to rely on a cellular connection to try to play a decent video. I'm just not going there. Not yet. Maybe they'll get there, but.
All right, last topic here. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I was trying to sneak in a read, and I have not read it, so I cannot talk to it. We may want to wait till next week. Has anyone read the Wall Street Journal op-ed on who invented the internet?
Tim Berners-Lee. I didn't read it, but Tim Berners-Lee invented it.
Alan read it.
No, Michael.
I know. There's
The World Wide Web.
I know where you're going. I know there's.
All right. Did you read the op-ed, Alan?
I know.
I read the op-ed. I've read all of the arguments that have come after it as well.
All right. Let me read
the
let
World
me.
Wide Web, not the internet.
All right, let me say that the first, I'll read the first paragraph and then, Alan, you summarize it. A telling moment of the presidential race came recently when Barack Obama said, if you've got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. He justified elevating bureaucrats over entrepreneurs by referring to bridges and roads, adding the internet didn't get invented on its own. Government research created the internet so that all companies could make money off the internet. And then the next sentence, it's an urban legend that the government launched the internet. Alan, what are your thoughts on this? You actually read the piece. I just found the URL shortly before. Normally I read this stuff, but someone put the topic in there. I'm not sure who, and they didn't put the URL, but I Googled it and found it, but I didn't have time to read it. So Alan, saving me once again.
Basically, my thoughts on this are that whoever wrote this editorial either is ignorant or is willfully malicious, because they are wrong on just about every single point that they wrote in the op-ed piece. In fact, in certain places, they quoted a book about one of the things they tried to push, for example, is saying that, no, it wasn't the government, it was companies like Xerox. And he quotes a couple of researchers at Xerox at the time. And Xerox came out and said, what are you talking about? Of course the government invented the internet. And the researchers that he cites came out and said, what are you talking about? We were working under a government contract at the time. So, there have been a lot of people who have come out since and said, not only did the government build the internet, but the government is the only people who could have built the internet the way it is. That if, when the researchers tried to build it initially, they did go to people, to companies like AT&T. They did go to Ma Bell and say, hey, we're working on this technology. Are you interested in working with us? And AT&T, who was telecommunications at the time, essentially said, no, why would we want to work with you? We have our technology, and quite honestly, we're not going to let you use it. So why would we want to encourage this sort of thing? So the article itself is, sorry, not the article. It is an op-ed piece, and I want to be clear about that. Really did no service to the people who were making these utterly false claims. Now, Michael, what were you attempting to say before?
Oh, no, I don't, no. I was just saying I didn't read the op-ed piece, but I remember what I was taught about the internet back in college.
All right, so we all agree that obviously this op-ed writer was paid off by Google and Oracle to write this. Okay, final viewer comments here.
Not likely Google, because Google actually does have one of the people who invented the internet working for them.
We'll know on the 17th, won't we? All right.
So, do you guys
go ahead.
have the links to the original articles? Because this is clearly the final word, but I would like to trace it back to the who said what first sort of thing.
About the internet?
Mm-hmm.
I have in the topics, there's a link to the Wall Street Journal op-ed. I don't know anything above that. I haven't even read it, which I will read it, and then we'll agree or disagree with Alan. A rare moment of disagreement, potentially. Okay,
that is actually the original article that started off the entire firestorm.
You mean the Krovitz article, the one by...
The bottom line is, if the government financed the initial concept and building and developing of what has become the internet, it's clear that the only reason that the internet has become a relative commercial success and has become huge and has become what it is because of the commercial entities and all the non-government entities that have adopted it and leveraged it and used it. Because I can tell you right now, the government here, the local government here in Frederick County, for example, I mean, when it comes to the internet, they're totally clueless. Totally clueless. And you can probably say that about most government agencies. They have no clue. And so maybe they were involved in the very beginning of making all of this possible, but
we're all interdependent, Craig. I mean, to
I'm not going to speculate on one side or another before I have read all of these articles, because this is a very big topic with very many implications, and I think it would be highly misinformed of me to make a judgment before I had read all the articles.
Indeed.
And who said what.
Okay, Craig, the final thought on that is we're all interdependent to a degree. I mean, you can say that because, I mean, you can't have a successful product without customers and where they blah, blah, blah. But to paraphrase the president, and potentially unfairly or fairly, that's the judgment of the listener, he's basically saying that you could say you created your own business, but it was only because a bunch of government workers and union workers did all this stuff to lay infrastructure. And I mean, that's what created the firestorm over that.
Well, and quite honestly, this is very familiar to me. This is sounds very much like a quote from Elizabeth Warren that was very famous last year.
Yes.
You guys remember this quote? It's like she says, like you may have Alan, can you help me out here? She says, like, so you're a success in business, like, but you may have, like, brought your business, you use the infrastructure to bring all your stuff on the roads.
Yes, Obama's speech, it was directly based on Elizabeth Warren's speech.
Okay.
It's a common theme, though, Alan. I mean, go back to Hillary Clinton's book, It Takes a Village. I mean, it's a common theme.
The problem is a lot of the infrastructure, especially the early infrastructure that was built in this country, like the big behemoth train stations in New York and all of these, a lot of those were built with private funds. And so it's only, the last 50 years or 70 years or whatever that more and more of these things have been public projects like the interstate highway system and so on. But prior to all that, a lot of the infrastructure in this country was built by private entities.
Okay, let's final comments and questions from Google Plus and YouTube. I can't pronounce Yoad. Some guy or woman says, if you happen to have Yakju. Okay, what do you real quick on this?
Back on the Android distributions, come on.
Oh my gosh, I've lost the Galaxy Nexus comes in two versions. One is called Yakju, and the other one is called Yakju WX. Google takes care of updates for Yakju, and the Yakju WX is updated by Samsung. Craig, is the blogger botch why Hangout 10 is on Google Sites?
Why is Hangout 10 on Google Sites?
Is it an issue with Blogger, or you've been using it since time began?
I've built a lot of the sites I use on Google Sites. It's free, and I've been using it for years, and why not?
No learning curve if you know it. Okay, and then I highly recommend it, Lawrence Smith. I'm not sure what you're recommending, but thank you. Craig is right, says Margie. This may be a weird question, but who owns our online identity? Are we the sole owner, or has anyone else company's rights attached to it?
That's a big one.
Good question. Depends what you define as identity. I mean, Craigslist famously said that they own all the copyrights to your Craigslist ad, and then they backed down and changed that. Google has said you have the right to everything. Facebook won't let you mass download your contact data. They shut down Mohammed Mansour's. Those are all elements of your online identity. So I guess it depends where it is.
Facebook has said you don't have that right.
Facebook blocked that app.
I have a workaround.
Yeah, there are workarounds.
Wow.
Google Authenticator.
Michael's got a workaround for everything.
Yes.
Google Authenticator is an app that can generate the codes without cell service.
You said that.
And Lawrence Smith says Craig is at a new angle. I think he's actually had a couple different angles throughout the show. I use the two-step verification for when I travel abroad and use the hotel Wi-Fi, and it works just fine. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. I'm guessing that's on the driverless car, which has never had an accident that wasn't caused by a human. Carlos Balderas, I don't think Apple is going to allow Google to release a Google-developed version of its YouTube app, at least not without a fight. Lawrence Smith, Stairway to Heaven Cloud. George Cozy, then it's a rotten apple. Hangout 10, Craig Ship looks like a madman. From Natisha Cookie. I have to say the people in these show are madmen. Thank you. Indeed, we agree on that. Google wants us to migrate to the cloud.
Excuse me, one mad woman.
Indeed, yes. Yeah, Monica, even though she's
one gorgeous mad woman.
She's rarely angry, but she's feisty sometimes, so she qualifies as mad. Google wants us to migrate to the cloud so they can gain access to our personal data and generate more revenue through ad sales. Natisha, I thought Lauren was going to be on the show. She was invited, I think. The business owners bust their butts with the work that they do. I'm censoring this. Those business personnel had an idea and took it to the next level. Why is Lawrence Smith not on the show? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that question. And then there's more than two versions of the Galaxy Nexus. Wait.
Correct.
So does Craig own Craigslist? Yes. He was our guest. Craig Newmark owns, I guess, a majority. I'm not sure.
Yeah, not this Craig. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not the Craig. It's a Craig. But he owns Frederick.com and Hangout10.com. Okay, final thoughts, beginning with Michael. on this wonderful Google Plus week before we close up the official recorded version, and then we'll continue with the Hangout.
I like how Google Authenticator and two-step made a comeback after 2 years. That was nice this week.
Awesome. Monica, final thoughts on this wonderful Google Plus week?
Yes, make your backups, kids, because you can never replace your photographs. The author of this Wired article lost the first year and a half of his daughter's baby pictures. And so although you can replace a lot of other things, you can never replace those pictures. So turn on two-step verification.
Excellent advice. Craig Shipp, boy, if you lost your photos, you'd be screwed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, just today, I lost the XML file for my iTunes. I had all my data on separate drives, right? And then I back all of those up every which way. But iTunes is one of the few programs that is not self-contained. Like my Aperture libraries and my events libraries for Final Cut Pro and all, they're all self-contained. They're totally portable. But iTunes has a XML file sitting over on the operating system drive that tells you the ratings and the playlists and all of that stuff. If you don't back that file up, then you basically still have all your songs and all your movies, but you don't know how you rated them and all that. So you have to really back everything up. Otherwise, you might lose some work.
Bruce Turner, final thoughts.
Yeah, first of all, big kudos to Chrome. I had to have my business laptop wiped and reloaded at the home office. Took them all day. Two things, I installed portable Chrome on my thumb drive, and I stuck it in a vacant machine that was there, booted it up, signed into my Google account. Boom, I got all my bookmarks, I got all my extensions, I got all my plugins. And then when they gave me the laptop back at 5 o'clock that day, I installed Google Chrome on it, same thing, everything's there. And then on the backup front, to just back up what Monica said, no pun intended, and whether you use Carbonite or any other particular program, I am sitting here right now restoring all those pictures, Monica, and all that music. Of course, I've got it all up on Google Music as well. But so, yeah, do a backup, and kudos to Google Chrome for making it so easy to get everything back.
And you got a new razor.
I got a razor, and I'm down 16.5 pounds. I just started a 30-day juicing fast. This is day 12.
Congratulations.
And 30
pounds in 12 days?
Going 30 days. 16.5 pounds in 12 days. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Good for you. Alan Furstenberg, that's one of the best. I love the cloud aspects of the whole Google experience. I love being able to, when I first signed in on my Nexus 7, I could find all my bookmarks and that sort of thing right there. And the instant upload of photographs from an Android device into Google Plus, and it's private and it's sort of a backup at full resolution, unlike, Facebook.
No items needed.
Default. Alan,
when it works, it's always amazing just how well it works, and when it fails, it's amazing just how badly it fails.
Final thoughts, Alan Furstenberg in New York.
I guess my final thoughts actually would be on a completely different subject. We had yet another ghost town sighting this week.
Yeah.
That was interesting. I don't think we're going to cover it this week, and I don't think we should. But it was interesting, and I suggest people go start reading up on all sides of it, because it's got interesting perspectives.
We should have covered that one.
I didn't mean to. Do you want to do you want to do that, or?
Oh, we should cover it because it's classic. Because this is no longer a ghost town.
All right, let's do it. I
Monica, you start it. You start it, Monica.
All right, Monica, go ahead.
Okay, so here's the deal. Mashable did another one of these classic Google Plus is a ghost town stories. And I saw it, and many people saw it. Amanda Blaine saw it, and she decided, no, we gotta call them out on this one. And so she cleverly went to their page, and she looked at one particular story that they had shared. And they first of all, they messed up in sharing the same material on 3 separate networks. They took the same story and they shared it on Twitter, they shared it on Facebook, and they shared it on Google+. And so she looked at the engagement for +1s, reshares, and Facebook likes. And so she combined these all, and she took it into a single screenshot, and then she posted it here. And she broke it down in the data, and she saw that the network with the most engagement overall is definitely Google+. No doubt about it.
But don't you think that's because it was a story about Google+? If it was a story about...
It wasn't a story about Google+.
They were...
Okay.
We should put the link. I'll give you Amanda's link so that you can put it on this on the post that goes with this. But it's undeniable because it's not just, it's the same story shared across 3 networks, and it's got the most engagement on this particular network.
Alan?
Amanda, I looked at least some of Amanda's reports, and she did a spot-on job at pointing out how Mashable really screwed up their reporting on it. Unfortunately, it wasn't Mashable's research. It was research from somebody else. And I thought what was most interesting about theirs was that not only were they saying that Google Plus didn't have the highest engagement, but what their results said was that Twitter had far more engagement than anybody else, and that Facebook's engagement was roughly proportional to Google Plus's engagement.
I don't think so. I think they said that Google Plus was the 4th out of all the networks, if you look at it.
It was a 4th, yes.
Was the 4th.
It was last, but I'm sorry, I actually read it wrong. The proportions were not the same.
They were.
The Twitter proportions were still blowing Facebook's out of the water.
Yes, and when you actually looked at the data, this was not true at all. And when you actually look at it, they gave you some really good sample data to look at, because and when you share the same story across 3 networks, it's very spammy, because if you are a fan of Mashable, you'd follow them on all 3 networks, so you'd see the same story 3 times. So it's very unprofessional.
Again, my understanding is that it was Mashable reporting based on OOMP's, I don't even know how to pronounce them, analysis. So I think it was that Mashable screwed up their reporting. OOMP, however, may have some legitimacy to the numbers that they were giving.
Okay.
I think Amanda did a great job in shooting down Mashable's arguments, though. The problem that I have with a lot of this is, okay, that measures one tiny segment. And one of the things that I posted was from something from Media Bistro, where they look at all of the things. And their conclusion is, and I'm quoting them now, here's the thing. Some people on Google Plus have very active, very engaged timelines, and they're very passionate about how Google Plus works for them.
Alan, it was actually not, it was the business editor at Mashable who wrote the article. So I'd be very surprised if it was someone from outside of Mashable, seeing it as it's the business editor.
Was it an aggregator rehash, Monica, or was it like, it wasn't, because they don't typically write a whole lot of original stuff. Everything I see from them is quoting another, they basically see an interesting article on Ars Technica or GigaOM or whatever, and then they rewrite it, and they link.
It's by Todd Wasserman. So I put the link in the chat, so if you want to.
Okay, all right, awesome. Okay, so
maybe you can invite him on next week. That would definitely be interesting.
It would be interesting.
You could call him out.
Okay, awesome.
Oh, you could have him and Amanda play that.
All right, so yeah, that would be a good debate. All right, final 2 comments here. Lauren Smith, wait, has anyone said anything about Alan in the comment stream? If not, this can be like Facebook first. And then final comment from Natisha Cookie. We love you, Google Plus Week. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We love you guys too. So everyone watching, thank you so much. We'll be back every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on YouTube Live, and then it's on YouTube itself. So thanks for watching. We appreciate it. And we'll continue to hang out live right after this, but the recorded version is done. And we want to wish all of you watching a very happy and healthy Google Plus Week.